Practice Test 2. Listening section.
Listen to part of a lecture in a sociology class.
Morning, class. Sorry I'm a little late. I had a bit of an accident in the parking lot. Nothing serious, but it slowed me down. A student from another class I teach... Well, actually, I'll get into that more in a few minutes. Okay, last week we looked at status hierarchy, how societies have social classes, socioeconomic hierarchies, and these are ranked based on status, and status is used to divvy up jobs and responsibilities and maintain some social control. Well, today I want to talk a little about signs, status signs or signals. These terms are interchangeable. Status signs or signals that we look at to get some idea of a person's status. Well, let me give you an example from the non-human world first. Remember the movie we saw last week about gorilla society? One sign you were told to look for immediately to help you identify the dominant male gorilla was silver hair on his back. Well, that's a sign that's pretty specific to gorillas. But I guess, come to think of it, I guess you could say that, in some cases, silver hair on males also works as a sign of status among humans, although on the head, not the back. Humans, in fact, probably have the widest range of status signs of all animals, of ways to signal status. And our signs are also more flexible and more arbitrary. They vary from culture to culture, from decade to decade. Think of some of our culture's status symbols that exist today. Like owning a big SUV. It means you're rich, right? You don't care what gas costs. Or a particular brand of athletic shoes, gym shoes we used to call them, before they started signifying higher status. What about an occupation? That can be a sign of your status. An athlete, an actor, a doctor. So, silver hair, clothing, cars, professions. To one degree or another, these are all signs of status in our society. Up to this point, I've been talking about signs that show high status. There are also signs that signal lower status. Again, occupations, like very dirty or tedious laborer jobs that pay minimum wage. Or in some contexts, old, ragged clothes. Being a child as opposed to an adult, you get the idea. So, status signs can be divided into two types. Constant and controllable. Constant, of course, means it doesn't readily change. In fact, these signs are exhibited even if the person doesn't necessarily want to signal his status. They're the most basic ways we have of identifying people in our society, and they're used in most human societies to help determine status. Gender, family name, ethnic markers, even reputation. The problem is that low status can, in effect, be forced on you. You can't control the circumstances of your birth. If some bias is attached to your ethnicity, family name, gender, and so on, your individual character or achievements may be irrelevant to your status. So this kind of status signal can reinforce social inequality from one generation to the next. You can pass on a fantastic reputation, a good name, or a bad name, your status, to your kids, even though they may not want it. In the United States, you don't hear the term so much anymore, but you used to. Blue bloods, people who belong to socially prominent families. Like the Kennedys, a status sign, the Roosevelts, the Vanderbilts. On the other hand, we've got controllable signs that we can quickly change on purpose, or sometimes we change them accidentally or subconsciously. Oh yes, here, a real-life experience. You get into a little fender bender in the school parking lot. You're mad, you're going to be late to class now, and you storm out of your car roaring, aggressive, in a threatening manner. You want to show the other driver, dominate the situation so it can go your way. Then you recognize that other driver. It's your professor. Oh, you back down quickly, grin sheepishly, shrug your shoulders apologetically, lower your voice, and drop the anger. Now you want to, convey a sense of appropriate, respect, deference to that higher status, to let her know that you know it's actually your fault. Controllable signs, language, what we say and our tone, nonverbal gestures, clothes, material goods like cars and iPods, these are all controllable status signals. One more interesting thing. I shouldn't leave you with the impression that it's two ends of a scale and never the twain shall meet. It's a continuum, really. For instance, you can change your physical posture quickly. It's a controllable status sign. But you probably won't be changing cars every few months. That status sign lasts a lot longer. And even constant signs that are, well, as I said, constant, but even they can be changed. Playwrights have had great fun changing or reversing constant status signs in their characters. Transformations from a prince to a pauper, that sort of thing, or Cinderella. None of this is set in stone. It's just a convenient framework for looking at the way we humans signal status.
Now get ready to answer the questions. You may use your notes to help you answer. Number 1. What is the lecture mainly about? Listen again to part of the lecture. Then answer the question.
Sorry I'm a little late. I had a bit of an accident in the parking lot. Nothing serious, but it slowed me down. A student from another class I teach. Well, actually, I'll get into that more in a few minutes.
Number 2. Why does the professor tell the students that she will tell them more about the accident later? Number 3. According to the professor, what is one problem with constant status signs? Number 4. The Kennedys, Roosevelts, and Vanderbilts are mentioned as cases in which someone inherited Number 5. In the lecture, the professor describes characteristics of constant and controllable status signals. Indicate to which category each of the following belongs. Number 6. How is the control of status signs illustrated in the professor's story about the accident in the parking lot? Listen to part of a conversation between a student and her professor.
Hi, Professor Plummer. Do you have a minute?
Sure, Liz, sit down. I'm just finishing up the latest online self-test for class. Now, just this, and great, it's ready for you. Are you finding the online stuff helpful?
Actually, that's what I wanted to talk to you about. Well, I was wondering, have there been problems with the site lately?
Problems? What do you mean?
Well, I haven't been able to do the last quiz. I mean, I can get on the site, but it's so slow. It's really frustrating. There's like a delay with everything I type.
A delay?
Yeah, I don't see the letters immediately as I type them, like I do in a word processing document, for instance. And then all of a sudden, they'll show up, the letters, in a group. It's so disconcerting. I end up making a lot of mistakes that way. It's like talking and hearing your words delayed rather than as you say them. You know what I mean? Hasn't anyone else complained?
No, Liz, no one has. And I was just online myself with the final run-through of the latest test. I didn't have any problems at all.
I really need these self-tests and all the other stuff you've been putting online. It's really useful, Professor. I don't know what to do now. Why am I the only one having trouble?
Well, Liz, maybe you have a virus.
I thought about that, but I've been running an antivirus program all the time I'm on my computer.
What about spyware and adware? Do you have a program for that?
Well, sure, my antivirus program.
I doubt it, Liz. Most antivirus programs aren't set up to look for spyware or adware. You need a separate program for that. There are several good ones out there.
And that spyware, adware stuff, it could make my computer act funny?
Sure could. The people who make these nuisance programs should be shut down. If you ask me, it's an unethical business practice to sneak them onto people's computers. The problem you're describing makes me think this might be what's happening, especially if you were able to access the online site before without any problems.
Yeah, I was. That's why I was so sure it had to be something with your site rather than with my computer. I log on one night and it's fine. The next night, it just doesn't work. Guess I'd better stop by the computer store and get an anti-spyware program, huh?
Well, first I'd recommend taking your computer to the computer help desk and having it checked out to be sure this is the problem. They usually know their stuff.
Right, that's a good idea. Thanks a lot, Professor.
Good luck, Liz.
Now get ready to answer the questions. You may use your notes to help you answer. Number 7. Why does the student go to see her professor? Number 8. What problem is the student having? Number 9. The student assures the professor that she uses antivirus software. Why does the professor still think the problem is with the student's computer? Listen again to part of the conversation. Then answer the question.
Well, I haven't been able to do the last quiz. I mean, I can get on the site, but it's so slow. It's really frustrating. I can't... There's like a delay with everything I type.
A delay?
Number 10. Why does the professor say this?
A delay?
Number 11. What does the professor think about the computer help desk? Number 12. What will the student probably do next? Listen to part of a talk in an economics class. We've been looking this past week at modern capitalist economies, and we've noted that governments get involved in making economic policy to varying degrees. We've pretty much agreed that in this day and age, you can't really have a government that ignores the economy, at the very least. Governments are involved in economies because they buy goods and services, right? In fact, in the United States, the federal government is the largest customer in the country. So, the government influences the economy directly through what it buys and how much money it spends. But are they the only actors involved in economic policymaking? That's what we're going to talk about today, how economic policy is made, and, we'll use the United States as our example. So, let's see. Who can get us started? What are some factors that help determine economic policy?
The political parties, the Democrats and the Republicans, seem to have different ideas about how our economy should work.
What about interest groups? Different industries lobby for different bills they want passed, like deregulating an industry or protecting another. And Congress, of course. They help make economic policy, right?
And doesn't the economy itself make a difference?
Can you give us an example of what you mean, Anne?
Well, if the economy seems to be slowing down, people aren't buying as much stuff, and so companies start laying people off. Well, there needs to be some policy to get the economy moving again.
Good. Your answers are all correct. They're all factors that help make economic policy. So, let's categorize these factors. Let's see if I can remember them all. The Congress, political parties, the economy itself, what else? Oh yeah, interest groups. Well, you've hit the three main areas that affect economic policy in the United States. First, we have structural factors. This starts with the economy itself, like Anne said. whether or not it's healthy, and even before that, the complexity of the economy in the first place. A couple hundred years ago, the American economy was a pretty simple market economy. But today, it's gotten so complex that most people think that you can't just let it go on its own. Something that happens in one part of the economy, a major corporation declaring bankruptcy, for instance, can affect so many other parts. So these are structural factors. How developed the economy is, how strong it is. Okay, moving on. Another structural factor is the political climate. I don't mean climate exactly, context or culture, political culture. Where do we start from? What's the general philosophy towards the role government should play in the economy? These all deal with structure. Now, you also mentioned political parties, interest groups, and I'm surprised you didn't say voters or public opinion. Don't any of you believe in democracy? Well, this is the second group of factors we have in making economic policy, political factors. I believe the first thing mentioned was political parties. That's understandable. The political parties in the U.S. today are pretty much defined by their economic beliefs, aren't they? Republicans want fewer taxes, less government regulation of the economy, less government spending. The Democrats want to use economic policies to lower unemployment. They worry about disparities in income, the gap between the rich and the poor, and the diminishing middle class. And for the final category, we've got governmental factors. What did you all mention? Congress, that's right. We've got a government institution called the Federal Reserve Board. And hey, how about the president? He certainly has a big role to play in economic policy making, doesn't he? So let's recap here. 3 groups of factors that, go into making the policy. Structural, like the economy itself. Political, for example, interest groups. And finally, governmental factors. The president or Congress.
But is any one factor more important than the others?
Well, if we think about it, I suspect we'd conclude that, one group of factors might be more important, or maybe 1 or 2 specific factors might be more important at one particular time. But it changes, and we're pretty unique in this way. We've got a democracy with a system of checks and balances built into our government. And I think that makes it possible for a wide variety of actors to be involved in the process. The policies we finally come up with, the ones that get implemented, they end up being the result of a whole mix of factors. Although ultimately, it's the government that passes the laws and regulations and makes the decisions. But they do have to answer to the public, to us, and they can't ignore what's going on in the economy itself. Now get ready to answer the questions. You may use your notes to help you answer. Number 13. What is the talk mainly about? Number 14. What are the 3 categories of factors that play a role in making economic policy? Number 15. How is the talk organized? Listen again to part of the talk. Then answer the question.
And doesn't the economy itself make a difference?
Can you give us an example of what you mean, Anne? Number 16. Why does the professor respond to the student's question with a question of his own? Listen again to part of the talk. Then answer the question. I'm surprised you didn't say voters or public opinion. Don't any of you believe in democracy? Number 17. What can be inferred from the professor's comment? Number 18. Which of the following best expresses the professor's opinion about the relative importance of different factors in economic policymaking? Listen to part of a lecture in a biology class.
Okay, so we've been discussing how living things are classified, and now we're going to take a look at animals. Specifically, I want to start with our own species, Homo sapiens. A bit of a background on that name itself, as you might remember. We've talked about how Carolus Linnaeus had this idea to categorize plants and animals according to their similarities. So, Linnaeus is the one who named our species Homo sapiens, literally, wise man. Sometimes it's a little difficult to understand why he called us that, isn't it? Anyway, he also decided that we, of course, had to be ranked above all the other animals. So the group we fit in, the order, is called Primates. Comes from Latin, means first in rank. All right, today I want to talk a bit about the order of primates, how they're defined, what families make up the order, that kind of thing, with special focus on the simians. There are simians and prosimians in the primate order. Prosimians obviously come before simians, hence the prefix pro. They come before them in time. They're less evolved than the simians, I guess you could say. Anyway, that doesn't matter too much now because I'm not going to talk about prosimians today. Okay, let's see. There are 6 natural groupings of primates. The first 3 are the prosimians that we won't cover today. So the other 3 are simians. Simians include New World monkeys, Old World monkeys, and finally apes and humans. But wait, before I go into any detail about the simians, I'd better give you a general idea of what characteristics define the primates. Probably the most important thing is that all primates are or were at one time tree dwellers. They lived in trees. So they have some characteristics that are essential, that are at least helpful if you're going to live in a tree. 5 digits on the end of each limb, not tree limb, I'm talking about the primates. Their arms and legs, of course. And opposable thumbs. That means that the thumb can be placed opposite each finger. Try to do that with your middle finger and index finger. You can't. Some primates, but not us, have opposable toes too. This opposability, if you will, in combination with all the fingers and toes, makes primates particularly well-suited for grasping branches. And another thing about those fingers and toes, those digits, they've got pads on the ends that are filled with nerves. So they're good sense organs. Hot, cold, rough, smooth, slippery, wet, dry, soft, hard. You get the picture. So what else would help if you're living in a tree? Well, good vision, good sight. Primates have a better developed sense of sight than they do a sense of smell. Compared to other animals, dogs for instance, primates can't track scents too well. Those eyes, being so important, are protected by a circle of bone. Unlike dogs, primates have eyes that look forward. A dog's eyes look sideways. So looking forward means that at some point in front of us, the fields of view of the 2 eyes overlap. The primate brain uses this overlap to produce depth perception. And how is depth perception helpful? Well, when you're moving through the forest, on the ground, or from branch to branch, tree to tree, that depth perception is real useful. Okay, digits on the ends of limbs, opposability, sense organs on the digits, sharp eyesight. Oh, one more, the brain. Primate brains are large relative to body size, and they're more complex. And another special thing about primates, after a pregnancy that lasts for several months, the female primate usually has one baby, just one offspring at a time, and that baby needs a lot of care. It grows slowly and really depends on its mother. And that's actually good because that's what lets primates develop complicated social organizations. That long period of dependency is used to socialize the babies into primate society. and to teach them, to pass down knowledge from the prior generation. Before we call it a day, I want to point out a couple of things about apes and humans, why that group is separated from the other 5, the group we're in. It's based on morphology. That's an organism's form and structure. Apes and humans have barrel-shaped chests. We're relatively large, with comparatively large brains. And of course, one of the most visible differences, unlike the other 2 groups of simians, and all 3 groups of prosimians, apes and humans are missing something, a tail.
Now get ready to answer the questions. You may use your notes to help you answer. Number 1. What is the lecture mainly about? Number 2. Why does the professor name only 3 of the 6 groups of primates? Listen again to part of the lecture. Then answer the question.
So, Linnaeus is the one who named our species Homo sapiens, literally, wise man. Sometimes it's a little difficult to understand why he called us that, isn't it?
Number 3. The professor's question implies that she Number 4. Indicate whether the attributes below are characteristic of all primates according to the lecture. Number 5. Why does the professor mention the eyes of dogs? Number 6. What differentiates apes and humans from other primates? Listen to part of a conversation between a student and a university administrator.
Well, I must admit, Ms. Roberts, I don't get many requests from students for a meeting.
Thank you for seeing me. I won't take up much of your time. I was wondering about the menus in the dining halls. How you decide what to serve each meal.
Well, that's pretty much left up to our dietitian and our chef. Is there something wrong with the food?
Oh no, I mean, it's good. It is good, but recently I've been having trouble finding things I can eat.
Do you have a food allergy?
No, not exactly.
Are you on a restricted diet? We offer low sodium, low carb, low fat, high protein.
Well, actually, you see, I've just recently, I'm a vegan now, and even though the food's good...
I'm sorry, you're a what?
A vegan, a strict vegetarian. I don't eat any animal products at all.
Not even eggs or cheese, milk?
No, I'm sorry, but nothing that comes from an animal.
Well, I know we have vegetable offerings every meal except breakfast, I guess. And there's fruit.
Well, yes, but, I thought maybe, I was wondering if maybe one of the dining halls could have some vegan main courses, along with the other stuff, and soy milk.
We have over 1,000 students, you know. It's really not possible to fix special meals just for 1 or 2 people.
Oh, I wouldn't be the only one. A couple of my friends are vegans, and there are a lot of vegetarians here and people who just enjoy a non-meat meal once in a while. I've been asking around, and...
You know, we have a food services advisory board here. They make recommendations for policies. How would you like to be on it?
What do I have to do?
Well, the board meets once a month unless there's a special meeting called...
No, I meant to get on the board. Is there an election or something?
No. The members are appointed. We could use another student.
And then I can get things added to the menu?
Well, I can't guarantee that, but you could certainly make your case if you can show that there is enough of a demand and if the chef can find some cost-effective vegan recipes that will work in our kitchens.
Oh, I'm sure that I could help with that.
Well, Miss Roberts, I appreciate your interest. Could you come to our meeting next Tuesday night?
I sure can. Thanks a lot. I was so afraid you'd say, no way.
Now get ready to answer the questions. You may use your notes to help you answer. Number 7. Why does the student go to see the director of food services? Number 8. Why does the director mention how many students attend the university? Number 9. According to the conversation, which steps are most likely to lead to the addition of vegan food to the menus? Choose 2 answers. Number 10. How does the director decide to address the students' concerns? Number 11. Why is the student in a better mood at the end of the conversation? Listen again to part of the conversation. Then answer the question.
Well, Miss Roberts, I appreciate your interest. Could you come to our meeting next Tuesday night?
I sure can. Thanks a lot. I was so afraid you'd say, no way.
Number 12. What does the woman imply when she says this?
I was so afraid you'd say, no way.
Listen to part of a lecture in a psychology class.
One of the more interesting, and I must say, to date, not well understood, not even well researched. You'll understand why as I describe the phenomenon. But it's fascinating because most of us have had the experience, is the experience of deja vu. It's a memory, isn't it? Or at least it seems to be. Hold on a minute. We've had this lecture before, haven't we? I distinctly remember Mark sitting there in the front row, that red sweater, and, I'm really sorry, guys. I didn't realize till just now that we've done this already. Give me a moment to regroup and we'll move on to the next topic.
Dr. Watson, excuse me.
Yes, Mark?
Well, you haven't talked about deja vu in this course yet.
I haven't?
No, and this is the first time I've worn this sweater. I just got it yesterday.
You're right, of course. But if I truly had been experiencing a case of deja vu, I wouldn't be so quick to agree with you. I might go along, but in my mind, I'd know somehow, that I had indeed given this very class, this very lecture before. No matter what you said, I wouldn't be able to shake that feeling. And that's deja vu, a strong, intense sensation of familiarity with a place or situation, that you've been there before, done that before, even though logically it's not possible. The deja vu memory is impossible. I didn't expect such an apt example. How could I remember Mark sitting in the front row with that red sweater if this is the first time he's worn it? Deja vu in French literally means already seen. Studies suggest that maybe about 2/3, some even say up to 90%, but the precise number isn't so important, except to acknowledge that it's not a rare phenomenon. Anyway, some 2/3 of the population have experienced deja vu at one time or another, and we can only describe it anecdotally for the most part. By anecdotally, I mean we have to rely on reports of deja vu experiences, because so far, we haven't found a way to make it happen, to reproduce it in a laboratory setting. That makes it difficult to study. So, what are the characteristics of deja vu? Well, it seems to occur randomly, lasts anywhere from a few seconds to a few minutes. Often, there's also a vague feeling of premonition, some kind of sense of the future, of what's going to happen next, although it seems that the actual next step to predicting the future never quite happens. It's a real strong sensation that something happening to you right now in the present has already happened. You feel like you're remembering a previous experience of it, even though it couldn't possibly have happened to you before. Experiencing the present as something that already happened in the past, but actually it didn't, and you can't really pinpoint when it happened, not specifically, so it's an undefined past, a vague time. You're just sure you've been there before. There are a lot of theories out there trying to explain deja vu. We used to think that the memory part of the brain functioned like a filing cabinet, full of memories, recollections, ready to pull out when needed or desired. Although sometimes a memory would get misplaced, lost. But since the 1970s, research into how the brain remembers has showed us that it's not like a filing cabinet, and in fact each memory is made up of a complex network of, signals. And those signals aren't grouped together in the brain, they're scattered all over. So maybe deja vu can be explained as problems with these signals, something going wrong. Or maybe the brain is malfunctioning as it's trying to process information it's receiving. Or maybe the brain is confusing something similar in the present situation to a real memory and converts it somehow into deja vu. Or finally, maybe the brain gets distracted from the present, and when it comes back to focus again on the present, it feels like a memory. There's no concrete explanation as of yet. Here are a couple more tantalizing tidbits about deja vu. It seems that children don't experience it until about the age of 8 or 9, and from this, we're thinking that it has something to do with the brain reaching a particular stage of development. And deja vu seems to be more frequent among teenagers and 20-somethings. Oh, and there seems to be a relationship between being stressed or tired and having an experience of deja vu.
Now get ready to answer the questions. You may use your notes to help you answer. Number 13. What aspect of deja vu does the professor mainly discuss? Number 14. How does the professor illustrate deja vu? Listen again to part of the lecture. Then answer the question.
I didn't expect such an apt example. How could I remember Mark sitting in the front row with that red sweater if this is the first time he's worn it?
Number 15. What does the professor imply when she says this?
I didn't expect such an apt example.
Number 16. How does anecdotal evidence relate to the study of the phenomenon of deja vu? Number 17. Why does the professor mention the brain functioning like a filing cabinet? Listen again to part of the lecture. Then answer the question.
Or maybe the brain is confusing something similar in the present situation to a real memory and converts it somehow into deja vu. Or finally, maybe the brain gets distracted from the present, and when it comes back to focus again on the present, it feels like a memory. There's no concrete explanation as of yet.
Number 18. What does the professor mean when she says this?
There's no concrete explanation as of yet.
Speaking section.
Describe a favorite place in your town or city where you like to go, and explain why you like it. Include details and examples to support your explanation. Some students study in a quiet place. Others study in a place that has a lot of background noise. For instance, a blaring television or music playing. Which method of studying do you think is better for students and why? A group of students and faculty want the university to find a new commencement speaker for the university's graduation ceremony next month. Read the editorial in a student publication about the speaker. You will have 45 seconds to read the editorial. Begin reading now. Now listen to two students as they discuss the editorial.
That's strongly stated. I wonder if anything will come of it.
It seems a little harsh to me, and it's counter to the whole idea of a university.
What do you mean?
Well, a university should encourage different opinions, free speech. Getting rid of the graduation speaker just because they disagree with something she said or did, well, isn't that like censorship?
I don't think so. It doesn't make sense to have a speaker who doesn't even believe in university education.
I don't think you can make that conclusion just because she doesn't believe in using government money for student loans. In fact, I think that if someone agrees to speak at a graduation, it's because they really do appreciate how important education is.
Well, generally, I'd say you're right. But I don't know in this case. Don't you think ensuring that young people get a college education should be a top priority for the government?
I definitely think it has to be a priority, but I'm not sure government is the way to make that happen. Instead of trying to silence her, the newspaper should engage her on the issues, do an in-depth interview, challenge her to explain her vote.
The man expresses his opinion of the editorial in the student publication. State his opinion and explain the reasons he gives for holding that opinion. Now read the passage about physiognomy. You have 45 seconds to read the passage. Begin reading now. Now listen to part of a lecture on this topic.
Lots of experiments seem to show that the features of the face over which, short of plastic surgery, a person has little control, and facial expressions, which we can more readily manipulate, right, do indeed affect social relationships. One interesting experiment happened about a decade ago. Romania, a former communist country, held presidential elections in 1996. In the first round of voting, 16 candidates vied for the office of president. For the most part, the voting public had no idea who any of these candidates were. But all the candidates participated in a nationally televised debate. They were all white males in their 40s, 50s, and 60s. Oh, and for the debate, they were all similarly dressed, in suits, I imagine. So researchers showed videotape from the debate to Americans who couldn't speak Romanian and, of course, knew nothing about Romanian politics or the election. Nevertheless, these Americans, based on seeing short clips of the candidates participating in the debate, the Americans were remarkably successful in predicting their electability. There was a high correlation between Americans' perception of how electable a candidate was and how many votes he received from the Romanian electorate. The Americans were able to judge how well the candidates would do based on looks and personal impressions, with no idea of what the candidate was saying.
The professor describes an experiment involving presidential candidates in Romania. Explain how the experiment is related to physiognomy. Now listen to a conversation between two students.
So, Melissa, I've been thinking about how to conduct the interviews we need for our film. I think we should film the entire interview from the outset.
But, Michael, won't we waste a lot of film that way? Shouldn't we do some kind of preliminary interview before we start filming? You know, ask some soft questions to put the subjects at ease, and then turn on the camera and ask the big ones?
I think it's better to get it all on film just in case. You never know when someone's going to say something we can use. And besides, people don't need to be put at ease. We all grew up on film, remember? I mean, what kid our age hasn't had mom or dad attending every sports activity, every grade school drama or concert with camcorder in hand? And now digital. Everyone's a film star. No big deal.
Maybe for some it's no big deal, but most people still get nervous when it comes to a real film, not just some home movie. And we don't want them to be thinking about the camera, which, by the way, remember, is quite a bit bigger than your digital camera. Plus, we'll have lights and a sound recorder. It's a different experience.
I still think it's more important to film everything. And to not worry about making people comfortable. Spontaneity is the key.
No, first we should interview them on tape, get some idea of who they are, how they react, and then we'll film the heart of the interview.
It's too much of a risk. We'll either miss getting something important on film, or it'll end up looking too rehearsed.
Not if we plan our interviews carefully. If we do it your way, people could be so nervous that they won't make any sense.
I'm not so sure.
The students discuss two possible solutions to their problem. Briefly describe the problem. Then state which solution you prefer and explain why. Now listen to part of a talk in an economics class.
So, what do we mean when we talk about price? Well, it's not just the price tag on something you buy at the store. The tuition you pay for a semester here at the university is a price. So is the rent you pay on your apartment or the cost of your car insurance. If you belong to an organization that charges dues for membership, the Sierra Club, for example, or the entrance fee at a concert or a museum, these are all prices. Basically, a price is the amount of money charged for a product or service. Now, what's interesting about prices is how they change. I don't mean the actual amount, but how they get set. For most of history, buyers and sellers negotiated price. They would bargain until both agreed on a price, and if they couldn't agree, no sale. This kind of bargaining still happens in a lot of bazaars and markets in less developed countries. But around the end of the 19th century, fixed prices became popular. This is where one price is set for all the buyers. The buyer takes it or leaves it. But what's happening now? We seem to be going back to that original negotiated price between buyer and seller. It's called dynamic pricing. Dynamic because it changes. It depends on individual customers and the situation. And how is this happening? The Internet. On an auction site, an online seller puts an item up for auction, and buyers offer whatever they're willing to pay for the item. There are other sites where the buyer says how much she's willing to pay for a hotel room in a particular city or an airfare to a particular destination. The site matches that buyer with a business willing to sell the service at that price. We've almost come full circle, haven't we? Back to the seller and buyer negotiating and bargaining to set the price.
Using points and examples from the talk, explain what prices are and how they have evolved.
Writing section.
Now listen to part of a lecture on the topic you just read about.
For quite a long time now, scientists have believed that the mucus of the white tree frog, mucus that's a thick liquid, the mucus and the pads on its toes hold the key to the tree frog's ability to climb slippery trees and other surfaces, and to perch upside down on branches. Of course, these are essential abilities for any amphibian that's going to make its home in a tree. Scientists hypothesized that a combination of the viscosity, how fast or slow a liquid runs, helps keep the pads covered with the liquid. It doesn't drain away fast, and the surface tension of the mucus helps increase its adhesive power. So scientists have been putting their theories to the test. Recently, some researchers in England came up with some fascinating and rather unexpected, I must add, results. What got them thinking about this line of research in the first place was an observation of some tree frogs climbing on rocks over which water was flowing. How would this mucus be working through the flowing water? Well, the scientists did some studies and discovered a couple of important things. First, they discovered that the mucus layer between the toe pad of the frog and whatever it was standing on, that mucus layer was so thin. We're talking a millionth of a millimeter here, infinitesimal. That the thickness was, to quote them, indistinguishable from zero. Basically, there was no mucus layer between the frog's toe pads and the surface. They were in direct dry contact with whatever the frog was standing on. All the mucus was squeezed out through the channels that surrounded the pad cells. The second thing they discovered was that the viscosity of the tree frog's mucus was nowhere near as high as they expected, only half again as viscous as water. The scientists concluded from this that actually that design of the toe pads, those hexagonal cells and little pegs and channels, that design likely evolved to rapidly drain away the mucus from the toe pads rather than to keep it there. That is, to drain it away so that the toe pads could grip. One final thing. They looked at the force with which the tree frog's toe pads cling to the surface. What did they find? Well, the toe pads held their strength to cling for 2 minutes at least, and 2 minutes was long past the point when the mucus would have all drained away based on its viscosity level. Again, it wasn't the mucus that was enabling the tree frogs to cling and climb on those slippery surfaces. Back to the drawing board, because clearly there is something in the white tree frog's toes that is giving it this extraordinary clinging and climbing ability. What's holding them to the surfaces? Oh, and by the way, now there's another question. If all the mucus white tree frogs produce isn't used for glue to help the frog stick to surfaces, well, then what is it used for?